Adventures in Mortuary Archaeology and Commemoration. It's Archaeodeath.
Yes.
Hello.
Hello. So, I wanted to tell you that I don't have my TARDIS cup anymore. My son stole it when he moved. But I have something just as good since it is the month of June. And I'm going to show it to you right now. It is my Tired and Gay mug
Happy Pride.
that I got last year.
Are you feeling tired and gay, or are you just feeling gay?
Given this morning, I am very, very tired. I am especially gay during the month of June, so I'm ready.
Extremely gay.
Extremely gay. Like, if you think that I was gay before, like, my gay goes up 100,000%.
Right.
For those of you who don't know, this is Professor Howard Williams. He is a professor of archaeology at the University of Chester. I get the honor of him being my best friend in the entire world. And we do this thing where we get together and we talk about all things religion and death, and archaeology and theology of Doctor Who season by season. And today we're talking about season 10, right? Peter Capaldi's
Season
last
10,
season.
that's right. I'm losing track. It's all the timey-wiminess.
All the timey-wiminess.
We're on season 11, of course, in our watching, but we haven't covered season 10 yet, but I'm ready to go.
One of the things that I think is interesting that we're tackling this season is, because it is Pride Month, it is the month of June, we have a gay companion coming in during this season. So I think it's very interesting that we get introduced to an out gay companion for this particular season.
Which is possibly the reason why we need to press on and get our next live sorted out before the end of June, so we can have a season 11.
This is true. This is a really good idea. But I wanted to go back to something, if I may, for just a moment. We did talk about it in our last live, and that was the episode of the return of Dr. Mysterio. And I know that this is
special from season 9, yeah? Okay.
Yeah. And I know that we talked a little bit about it in our last live, but I want to say that something occurred to me while I was going over my notes for this year, or for this season.
Okay.
And I wonder, I often have quoted, and you've heard me say it, that the Doctor is sort of a de facto lonely god. You know, he travels the world, and what is he without his companions? Because we have to kind of have our companions to, what is a god without worshipers, as it were? Can we say that superheroes are the new pantheon of gods? I mean, have comic books replaced ritual? Because that's what this episode is all about. It's about, like, classic comic superhero trope. And I wonder if that is one of the things that they're trying to struggle with, is here is Doctor, who is kind of like this lonely god, and then he's confronted with the idea that there's somebody on Earth doing the same thing that he does. And how do you square with that? How do you say to yourself, I'm ready to share this? Or do you think he's a little, precious, to use a colloquialism? Is he a little precious over his status as the Earth's savior?
I will leave that hanging, other than to say that we've seen him desperately competitive in regards to Capaldi's Doctor Who, in regards to his relationship with Danny Pink. That was, and we see him being acerbic, and but in that episode, he comes closest to understanding there are other very powerful beings, and we're going to race into this new season. We're basically going to meet a being that is even more powerful than the Doctor. And while I like the fact that the Doctor doesn't constantly come up against a kind of Picard Q type dynamic, there's nothing all powerful that's meddling in his timeline. He is always dealing with characters that are cleverer and more powerful than him. I mean, the Master, Missy, is in many ways far superior in intellect and and a destructive force than the Doctor. So you have that kind of. There are versions of it, yes, of course. Uh, yeah, but I think the Doctor. We see a fluctuation of him asserting his godness and his
His
demigodness,
deity.
depending on whether he's dealing with people as powerful or more powerful than him. But certainly in season 10 that we're going to come on to, we're going to see, he's lost his power in season 9. He has to make his way to Gallifrey the long way round, and he's then isolated without Clara. He's lost memories of Clara. He's brought perhaps down to a more humble place with the return to Dr. Mysterio. And are we going to see him building up to his megalomania and his delusions of godlikeness, or are we going to see a sort of more trundle? I don't know. It'd be interesting to see. I certainly think we see him coming down to earth in season 10, literally, and in terms of the sort of smaller scale plots that I think are some of the better episodes in this series.
I agree with you. I just, in thinking about it and trying to reframe the idea of that Dr. Mysterio, it occurred to me and that's something I might have to kind of dive into on a separate, are superheroes the new like pantheons of the gods? And I'm probably gonna, how I get it. But I had to get it off my chest. So I am ready if you wish to start with the pilot. Since I started off, I turn it over to you for your exquisite understanding of this episode.
Okay, from my perspective, the Doctor's back to basics, but he's back to, for the first time, he's back to an academic status. He's like me, sitting in an office. He's got his little pen holder full of sonic screwdrivers, and he's lecturing in an office. He's in an office that no academic actually has. He has this, even in Oxbridge. I've been in the rooms of some of the more illustrious professors of Oxford, Cambridge, and some of the older universities in the UK. None of them have offices like that. Well, a few have quite established ones, but, associated with the rooms. But, yeah, it's a kind of fictional world. But then he goes outside and you realise it's Cardiff, and Cardiff University doesn't have anything like that as far as I know. Anyway, that's beside the point. It's a fantasy academic, but he's down to earth, and he sort of adopts Bill, who's working in the canteen, sees her potential and sort of adopts her as a private tutor. Whether it's because he's bored, whether it's he's desperate for the company, Bill finds a way into his world through discovering a puddle and becoming embroiled in a plot. So in many ways, it's a kind of incidental. It's not because of the Doctor, but it's the Doctor and Bill, sort of fate aligns them to come together. And we also have, of course, the Doctor has another companion in the form of Nardole, who we've encountered before, that he saved in the Husbands of Riversong. And Nardole is a sort of reconstituted sort of android, really, or cyborg, so part human, part composite, and played by Matt Lucas, who I never liked the first time around. I found Bill intensely annoying on the first time around, but I'm rewatching it again. I find them much more enjoyable characters. I don't know whether it's me changing or them changing, but I think maybe because actually I thought Little Britain, while it was about one out of 10 times their comedy worked, and the rest of the time was annoying. And I think I kind of thought I associated Matt Lucas too much with that. Perhaps that distance of time from Little Britain has made me feel more forgiving of him as an actor / comedian. But anyway, I found he's interesting because while Bill is the sort of female friend companion to the Doctor, we also have this kind of Nardole, who he treats like a servant. First time ever, the Doctor treats has a Jeeves and Worcester type relationship, and there's a hierarchy. How you characterise that, there's a master-servant relationship. Bless you. Which is really interesting and a bit weird and comedic, but it's an interesting one. So anyway, we meet the Doctor down to earth, pretending to be an academic, and a plot unfolds in which we meet a being that is a pilot of a interdimensional, or is it just cross-universal? I don't know, but a hyper being that could is latching onto someone to be a pilot, is looking for someone to augment it. And That's an interesting plot. I suppose it's the romantic ideal of the professor's office. I always thought was the main takeaway from this episode for me. And of course, he has photographs of, I think it's Susan and Riversong on his desk. And I think there's a sort of gives him a sort of bit of a retro Doctor. But those are my thoughts. I mean, the plot itself is pretty simple, and Bill saves and another girl becomes the pilot, and we'll come back to that, what happens to the pilot at the end of the series. But I thought it was an interesting opener. It wasn't grand and dramatic, and it set the Doctor back on a sort of lower keel, sort of an even keel, or sort of a lower sort of earthly and earthbound. And the other factor that's earthbound about him is we don't understand who it is, but he's on Earth because he's guarding a prison. He's guarding a big door and somebody who's within the prison that we find out later who that is.
That was good. I like it. I like your analysis. I will say that for me, this episode is good and yet scary, because in one way we have Bill who's come in. They don't make a big deal about Bill's gay identity. I do like that. I am not a big fan of, oh, look, this character is gay, and so everything about this character has to be portrayed as their sexual identity.
Yeah.
So it's just made apparent when Bill is having a conversation with the Doctor and saying that she's given extra chips to someone in the cafeteria because she likes her. She thinks that she likes her and just gives her extra chips. So I like that they don't make everything completely about her personal sexual identity. That being said, I'm concerned because often in media, especially in shows, movies, we have this trope called kill your gays. And what that means is oftentimes you get a gay character and either they end up dying or their loved one, their mate, their wife, their husband, their boyfriend, girlfriend, their them friend, ends up dying as some sort of way to create this idea and this mechanic of drama. It happens a lot, not only with gays, but also with minority and marginalized peoples in media. So that is something that when I first see this episode comes to mind is, are we going to be faced with another kill your gays trope? Nardole really bothers me only because they never explain Nardole. It's just we see Nardole in the Husbands of River Song, but then we see him as a head, and my favorite line is, "Can I come up for a while? It's a bit whiffy down here." And then suddenly he's back to a full body. He talks about, having parts of him replaced, and I got this here and I got there. But we never get a complete picture, at least yet, of why Nardole's there, what made the Doctor decide to. And then we have the added part of, yes, there's the vault. I personally liked his office. I think you should have an office like that, but that's just me. But I also see, here we go with, again, somebody who cannot handle loneliness. Whether it is that he's lived a long time and he just doesn't know how to deal with his own thoughts, his own processing of his own emotions over the last thousands of years, he does not do well alone. And we find that earlier on in earlier seasons. Earlier seasons, companions say, don't be alone, you don't do well alone.
And just so people who may only know academics from TikTok, if anyone's seen that episode, the Doctor's style of lecturing, I do know lecturers who lecture in that style. But for large first year groups, you can do that big performance to a crowd. But frankly, outside of dickish TED Talks that are insufferable to watch and insufferable to listen to, no lecturer actually does that kind of routine. There are lecturers at university who can't teach and never will be able to teach and have the personalities of dried bread that's moulded in an Egyptian tomb. But most of us are good teachers, but we're not trying to do oh, and here's how the universe works, and all this kind of thing. It's kind of painful to watch as a portrayal of academia and a bit demeaning. But I think it's fun. But I just wanted people to know that we do performance lectures. Here's this, and I do that for my students. But the students have long stopped being able to cope with more than 2 minutes of anything like that. They don't take notes. They don't listen. And they I'm sorry, but it's really difficult to do that kind of teaching anymore. But it's fun to see. And I suppose for me, the episode is really one that just brings him down to earth in a kind of romantic professorial way. But he can't shut up. He can't help himself. He's sticks out like a sore thumb. I mean, you've got to be blind to not notice that he actually knows stuff that no one else on the earth would know. He's not just a Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's who I mentioned on purpose just to annoy you. But he is beyond implausible. He's just he can't fit in. He can't shut up. He can't stop secretly running around the back, and he's like, there's no way that he's gonna fit. So it's funny. It's good.
And he can't stay still. Let's be honest. He's there. This brings me to he's made some kind of oath or some kind of vow at this point to stay on Earth. He can't leave Earth because he's guarding this box. And then it makes me think, what does he vow on? Like, what does he take this oath on? And what is thought of as this kind of sacred object that he would make this vow on to Gallifreyans? And I love that part. But he can't stay still. He can't manage to do that because he's not meant to be in any one place for any length of time. So I think that this episode really kind of sets us up for, one, how is he going to once again break the rules, because there's no way there's ever been a rule made that man adheres to. And then how is he going to find a way to drag Bill along with him, because we know part of who he is performance, and if he has no one to perform for, is it worth the doing?
Yes.
That's kind of, yes. And Neil deGrasse Tyson is a hot button for me that the professor just learned about recently. Oh, if you could hear our voice
press that button on regular intervals now, just to annoy you.
You know what? I have a couple of your buttons
I'm
too.
his greatest fan.
But that's really what I got out of it. I thought that as a restart to the series, I love that they named it Pilot. I actually thought it was a really good beginning episode for this season, and honestly, it makes me like Peter Capaldi more than I did before. This season really sunk Peter Capaldi for me as an icon among the doctors the actors that have played the Doctor. But that's all of my critique. I have some more about Smile, which is the next episode. But for Pilot, that's my entire critique.
Well, shall we move on to Smile, which is they find themselves, supposedly he's supposed to be on Earth guarding this prisoner, but then he finds himself waltzing off to another planet, and as happens with the Doctor, because he can't help himself, and takes Bill on her first off-world adventure. And they find a planet, I can't even remember the name of it, but the scenario is they're on a colony that is setting up for...
Galley's 581D.
Okay, there you go, well done. I don't remember these details. But the idea is that there's robots with emoji faces, and it's a critical commentary on emojis and emotions, and the robots are starting to misread the emotions of the settlers, the prep team for the settlers, and it's basically a terrible horror. It's a classic, actually, a good meat and potatoes horror sci-fi episode, of the idea that the robots have there's nanobots that are sort of reconditioning the planet and making up the entire facility, the colonizing facility. But they are interpreting any sign of emotional distress as a sign that they are failing people and need to be rebuilt. And it all comes, we learn, because I think it's best to write. There's a lot of mystery, but going to the end, the whole point, as far as I understand it, is the idea that the system doesn't expect. It's all about death and mourning. So it's my my thing. It is about the computers can't understand grief, and the death of an old lady sets off the robots to basically try and rebuild and reconfigure the flawed humans who are showing emotion, mourning and loss. So it's this idea that grief is a plague, and that they have to maintain happiness because they're seeing grief as a disease. So they're seeing, and given that everyone has a badge that communicates dissatisfaction, and it's on their back, it's another sinister use of the back of the body, the idea you can't see what the robots are reading, then the horror is the Vardy learn and try to be good servants, so quoting from my notes here, which is what the doctor says, so they can expand happiness, and they are basically killing off. So you have this horror story where there's bones everywhere, they're processing the bones of the dead. And you got this horrible moment where this ossuary of bones pours out as they're turning the bodies into fertilizer as part of the setup team. So they don't understand human mortality and human mourning and human emotions. I hope that's an okay characterization. So the first death of the colonists leads to this spiral. So it's a classic example of intelligent AI goes wrong. AI doesn't understand humanity and death. It doesn't understand mortality, and it doesn't understand the relationship between mortality and humanity. And there's key archaeological themes in it in terms of not only the display of bones and the grinding of bones and the recycling of bones into fertility, which is a theme across societies, and here in a tech example, but it's the idea of Maurice Bloch's anthropological work of the sort of limited of non-Western societies. I don't know if this idea is still in credence in anthropology of religion, but the idea that many societies have an idea of a limited, a finite amount of good or energy that has to be recycled. So that's why you have things like endocannibalism and eating your own relatives after they've died, right, as a mourning ritual, because you're reconsuming. Or in some societies, funerals are times where you get very drunk or have lots of good times with other people, because it's about expressing the energy that is lost, is negated, to negate the death. And so you have these. So it plays with that idea of fertilizer and the body recycling. And the AI is trying to do a kind of anthropology of religion on the bones. Is trying to sort of heal society through killing. And so it's messed up. That's the whole point. It's messed up, but it fits into that anthropology of religion framework of a number of consider the idea of a sort of vitality and or energy and its limitations. And also it has archaeology in it because they look back to human history and they see the grief and the violence in the human species. If I'm not mashing up my episodes, there's a lot of artifacts, and the body of the first death is sort of laid out almost like an Egyptian pharaoh or an ancient king or queen. It's sort of this idea of a sort of sacred space. I thought that was really good. And the final thing that's archaeological is, just as a spin-off line, the Doctor throws in some Viking pseudo-archaeology. He just has this throw-it line, because he's talking about the colony arriving and setting up using the spacecraft as the basis of the facility. And he says, the Vikings turned their boats upside down and lived in them. An analogy for the colony is what he's trying to suggest, based on the Vikings. Now, I've no idea where that piece of information comes from, that the Vikings would upturn their boats and live in them. I mean, if someone can tell me where that nonsense comes from, I don't know. Where did that? I mean, that's just another piece of Viking pseudo-history. Where did the idea the Vikings turned their boats upside down and lived in them? Well, we certainly know that they created houses for their boats, to protect them and to maintain them. They had boat houses, I think is that where the ideas come from? But I don't know any evidence that the Vikings. They also had tents in their boats so they could sleep and shelter in the boats. Yes, but turning the boats upside down to live in them. I mean, maybe they did, but what would you do with the sail? I don't know, where's this idea coming from? I don't know. So it seems one of those bizarre ideas someone's picked up somewhere and they thought they'd drop it into the script just as an aside. But I'm intrigued if anyone in TikTok land knows where that idea has come from. The Porgers said they were told it in middle school. I don't know. I'll have to look it up, because I may do a TikTok about that. But I thought that's an aside. That's not really part of the plot. But that's not part of the plot. But it's interesting how the Vikings just come up as an example of colonizers who adapt by making their ship into a home as a temporary measure. I like the idea, but it's nonsense as far as I know. But I'm happy to be corrected if there's some source that can back that up. So, sorry, that was my long ramble about that. So there's a mortuary archaeology theme of bones and not understanding death and burial, and then there's the Vikings as a side point.
So I love it. I could listen to you talk about this for hours, and often I do, gleefully. But for me, this episode talks to me about the toxicity that can be rampant in faith when we require positivity to be a member of society, to be a crucial member of society, because we often are told in society that we aren't really allowed to process grief. When grief happens to us, when someone in our lives passes away, the first thing people say is everything happens for a reason. God must have wanted another angel. All of these really empty and hollow words that do nothing to help someone process their grief. So when I'm watching this episode, to me, that's what stands out to me, is this idea of these people are not allowed to process their grief. And how does it parallel in a society which we're told we're not allowed to process our grief because we have to appear to always be happy individuals, or else we don't trust, especially those who have faith practices. Western faith practice often tells us that it was God's doing, and because of that, we cannot question God. So if it was their time, it was their time, and we should just be happy that they've gone and joined the Lord. And that's what this speaks to me. I mean, yes, the use of emojis is very evocative of the idea of we're now in this kind of age where we talk to each other, not in words, but in these kind of emotive in emojis, because we don't have the time or the capability to have an actual conversation anymore. So that also stood out to me, the use of the emoji as a means of communication. But really, it's this idea that there is a curse on this colony based on the fact that they are not allowed to process grief. And how often have I mentioned that Doctor Who likes to poke at Western religion? And to me, this is another way that they did that. They poked at Western religion by saying, no, must be positive all the time. God meant for this to happen. Oh, all of those people died in a flood? Well, that was God's doing. Let's be happy about it.
Well, the thing is, you can say so I framed it as AI not understanding humanity, but of course the AI is created by humans who are driving a sort of trying to treat emotions like pathological conditions, and that's the whole point. So it's not the AI's fault that there was so much fixation on well-being, physical well-being, that they took emotional and mental. Yeah, so it's whose fault is it? It's nothing to do with the AI really. It's to do with it's an example of how we may not understand things. Already we're seeing these debates about AI showing most of the AI failings are not the AI, but people are too lazy to actually work with the AI to do something intelligent. Like I just watched a TikTok about a barrister who just got someone else to prepare. We got the AI to prepare his case for him, but didn't check that any of the cases were real. They were all made up. So their career's over now. But is that the AI's fault, or was the AI is only doing what you people ask it? I've had already, I have to say, student essays clearly conjured in AI, and they would have got a pass mark if they'd actually taken the AI and done something intelligent with it, added references. And actually manipulated it into an answer, because that would have been an intellectual exercise. But no, they're the people that are lazy and want AI to replace their intellectual capabilities are going to fail. And in this, in a much more advanced futuristic context, it's not the AI's fault; it's the people's fault, isn't it? Who set up that system?
Absolutely.
Work with the AI, says Porgs. No.
This is absolutely. So that was my takeaway from Smile, and that's really what really hit me, is this idea of toxic positivity in a society where we have stopped learning how to communicate, and so now we do this kind of communication through technology, and because of that, we are no longer able to process our emotions in a healthy way. And how does Western society and Western religion play into that?
Yeah, and it's very much like the sort of, again, to provoke the university attitude to wellness is they offer sort of head massages and talking groups, and it's all just bullshit. It's just bullshit corporate wellness, isn't it? And toxic positivity, as that auntie said here. It's this kind of weird world where if you say you've got a problem, then it's solved by sending you on a counselling session rather than actually dealing with the freaking problem. Like we've got too much work. Perhaps you could actually not give us too much work, enough work that we're allocating, we're paid for the hours to do. Oh no. Well, instead it's much cheaper to send you.
Well, no, we won't do that. But would you like a pizza party?
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
pizza. And I have colleagues, and I shouldn't really say this, but I have colleagues who indulge this bullshit, and they do it to students too. They see the students are going through a cost of living crisis, the stress, the COVID pandemic, and it's like, maybe we have a lunchtime pizza chat. And I think, or we could just, or not, or we could actually do something that helps them. It gets my dander right up, to use a British term.
I love it. I mean, you say words wrong, but I'm here for your dander. I would also like to point out,
hang on.
I would like to say that because I am a rabbi and because I think of things in terms of Judaism does allow, we have this whole process for mourning. We have this whole process for grief. We sit Shiva, we tear our garments, we outwardly show the pain that we are going through. But even amongst Jews, there are going to be sects of Jews that will say, well, it was God's will, and you have to just move on. Now, when my father of blessed memory passed, I was loud with my grief. And the reason I was loud with my grief is because I was always loud about my love for him. My father was the end-all be-all for me. So I was very loud in processing my grief, because to me, grief is a testament to how much you love somebody.
Absolutely.
So when I saw this, that was the other thing that hit me was, I was a person who was just like overwrought, completely changed me. It completely broke me down as a person, and I had to rebuild myself in a different way. And I had to learn to live in a world that was completely stranger to me. And while Judaism did help with that in terms of we have these rituals that allow us to process grief, I would not be silent. And I would encourage anyone here who is listening or watching that if you are processing grief, your grief will last as long as it does. And anyone who tells you, why are you not over it yet, they need to go jump off into a lake somewhere. And that's the immortal words of Forrest Gump. That's all I have to say about that.
That's a wonderful sentiment, and it does link in. It's not I wouldn't say it's irrelevant to the episode, because the whole point we're getting at is that in Doctor Who, aimed at kids, they're dealing with themes of mortality and loss. Not only the loss of the leading characters, but of the loss of how other people are dealing with it. In abstract scenarios are safe because they're outside of our common world. And that theme links into the Thin Ice episode as well, where people are going missing beneath the ice of London in 1814. Unless there's more you wanted to say on Smile?
No, I'm good. I'm good to go on to Thin Ice. And I would like you to start this off, because there's a lot of things about this time period that I'm not aware of. Of course, I've never been to the UK as of yet. Please.
Okay, I mean, so this is a classic Doctor Who, goes back to the early 19th century. The Frost Fairs have been mentioned previously. They've led us up to this. The Frost Fairs got mentioned at least twice. And this is the last of the Frost Fairs on the frozen Thames of 1814, where the Thames completely freezes and freezes over, and they have a fair on them. This is historically attested, as far as I remember. I haven't done any research to check up on it, but Frost Fairs were a thing. But the idea, the scenario is it's an industrialization is wrong scenario, isn't it? And we find the bad guy is a toff who's exploiting. He's enslaved a beast beneath the ice, and he's drawing people onto the ice to because he needs its poo, and the beast's poo is fueling his industry. And so basically, it's another kind of megalomaniac, proto-Victorian, he's pre-Victorian, so Georgian, sort of proto-industrialist, does unseemly and inhuman things. And there's an alien creature, but it's the human that is the bad guy. And he's a classic sort of, he's not in the colonies, but he's a classic sort of slave plantation owner / industrialist bad guy. And the Doctor goes up against him and finds he's utterly inhuman. Even the Doctor can't pluck a guilt trip on him, or whatever the phrase is. He can't get him to see the meanness of his ways. And it's a good fun plot. It has that sinister horror element of something drawing people onto the ice, and it doesn't quite work, of course, but the theme is aristocrats versus slavery / indentured servitude. And the beast is also and like the one with the mind flaying beast in the
beast
bank
below.
No, I was thinking of the
the bank of Calabraxis. Yes.
Yeah, where the beast isn't the baddie, but you fight. Or the other example is, of course, the beast who creates the god. They worship the god and you realise that the beast wants to die and doesn't want to kill anyone. So the beast is let off the hook. It's just a big fat fish and wants to go off and have fun. And it doesn't want to sit in the Thames. No one wants to sit in the Thames. You've got to remember the Thames is one of the most polluted rivers. It's effluent, sort of pouring out of it. I mean, up until the 1980s and 90s, the Thames rivaled many of the developing world for its polluted. There's hardly any fish lived in the Thames. It's Britain's biggest river, and yet it's really, I think an important thing people need to remember is, the river is the beating heart of London, as a port city, a global city, with trade. But for a long time, post-industry, in the Second World War, everyone turned their back on the river, and it took a long time before the river was re-engaged with. So I think our stories about the historical Thames reflect our changing British attitude to the Thames as an icon of Britishness and of society, our tensions between our international, colonial, imperial past and our outward trading commercial aspect to us, and our multiculturalism, which is another spin on that, and our sort of inwardness as well. So I think the river is a metaphor on multiple levels I can't really break down because my brain can't cope with all that stuff. But I think the river is a really important thing for British culture. The River Thames, not every river, the River Thames, and a symbol, it's going through our capital. And of course, the Thames is named after probably a Brythonic goddess, going back to these big rivers probably had cults of water goddesses, as does the Dee and the Trent. So we have. So these rivers have a sacred or cultic role in British society on different levels. I'm probably not explaining this at all well, but I suppose my point is it's a great thing to, if you're going to focus on Britain, if you're going to have a historic story about Britain, I think it was great that they got away from, let's just run around another historic monument. Big Ben again, Cor Blimey, Stone the Crows. We're in American version of Britain where everyone's talking Cockney rhyming slang. It actually takes us to something else about London and something. So I like that. I love it. I think it was good, but I don't have anything. But it's another, slavery versus aristocrat story. It's a bit of almost social commentary in Doctor Who, which is no bad thing.
So for me, I am a sucker for anything Dickensian. So I love the backdrop of almost like kind of Dickens, London. I love the idea that the writers of the show often love to take a poke at the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world. We've seen that before, the Elon Musks of the world. And I think that's literally what they're doing here. They're making fun of a industrial revolutionist who is taking things away from the people that they should be enjoying to help. And so that is what kind of stood out for me. But in terms of like theology, I don't see too much in it. It's pretty feel good with the idea of the orphan being found out to be the lost long relative, then no longer going hungry. That is kind of the feel good. I didn't know about the Thames. I'm now kind of reticent. Maybe I shouldn't come there. Maybe I just come to Wales. and not go to London proper because,
London's a horrible
as
city.
you
I
know,
hate London. I hate London with a vengeance. Other people, I've got mutuals on here who live in London, breathe in London, love the art, the culture, the museums, and if you have the money, it can be a nice place. But with whatever, I can't even imagine how much a pint costs anymore in London. Not that I go into a pub regularly, but the cost of the place, the obscene inequalities of the place, and that's played out before in Doctor Who, that London is not a microcosm of Britain. It's really a thing unto itself, like New York and LA are in American
and Los
culture.
Angeles, yeah.
Yeah, they're not. There's films and culture and external representation orbits around these two great cities, and sometimes Chicago and maybe Detroit and other New Orleans gets a look in, but really it's those two cities, and the default, and then they're not typical of anything in the US at all, are they? But anyway, you know what I mean.
Yeah, and for me, the problem for me is you say this about the Thames, and for those who know me, I didn't think you know, I have hyperosmia. So I would be a great sommelier because I have a very heightened sense of smell. I can smell things clear across my house, sometimes next door, like at my neighbor's home. And so the idea you're telling me about the Thames, and I'm like, great, I would go into London, just like be 5 miles away from London and be like, no,
Oh,
no,
the
I'm
Thames
good.
is clean
Yeah,
now. The Thames is the least smelly thing in London now, Rabbi.
it's
It's
the
the
least smelly thing in
Yeah.
London.
I mean, that's what I was talking about. Historically, it was very polluted. Now it's much cleaner, actually. I mean, there's still a controversy about our water companies dumping sewage into it. Yes, of course. But I mean, it's cleaner in historical terms. In the same way, the
See,
air is cleaner in London, but it's still terrible air. But but it's better than it used to be because there's no longer wood and coal fires. There's no longer lead-based petroleum, being pumped into the atmosphere. So, London is a lot cleaner than it used to be, I want to assure you, but it's still a big, horrible city with lots of people and lots of smells.
I figured you were going to say, yes, just come to Wales. You don't need to see London, just
you don't
come
need
to
to see
Wales.
London.
There you go. Yeah, that was it for me. Do you mind if I start us off with knock knock, unless there's anything else you would like to talk about?
Go on to knock knock.
So what I find interesting about knock knock is the use of the word dryad for what is essentially a woodlouse. So for those who have not seen it, yes, there's some spoilers. Bill decides to, with some 5 other students, rent this very creepy home from a very creepy man. Like, if I saw this man trying to rent me a home, I would punch him in places that we've talked about and just walk away. I would just
I've
be like,
had creepy
no.
landlords,
Away.
and I've heard about creepy landlords, but no way, Jose, would I go near this guy. I mean, it's not even, it's hilarious. Like, why didn't they notice? In the same way as, like, when there's an episode in this next season we're dealing with that. Did anyone notice that the doctor's turning up they're all speaking in Yorkshire accents, and they're in, like, it's like they're in the middle of the Punjab. Anyway, we'll come on to that. But, and everyone just goes, oh, it's cool here.
Oh, well, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, and he's, not only is he creepy, but he's like stalker creepy. He's like staring at them.
Yeah, and basically he's basically, the woodlice ate his mum. And he's basically trying to the woodlice are keeping his mum alive as a kind of, and he's grown up looking after her and feeding her students every 10 or 15 years or whatever.
Every 20 years. Yeah, every 20 years, And
classic
so
horror.
The doctor's there. There's, the house is, I guess, morbidly beautiful. But for me, the idea that they used dryad, because historically a dryad in like Irish and Scottish and Pictish religious mythology was like a forest sprite or a forest fairy or a forest guardian.
Yeah.
A forest guardian that literally was there to kind of guard, not necessarily there to, take life force, eat people and turn them into living wood. Although it's kind of an interesting juxtaposition about this idea of living wood, especially if one happens to be of a faith that involves animism. Animism being the belief that everything has inherent life force in it. So thereby everything is alive, not just animals and people and bugs and insects, but actually the surroundings. Our homes are alive because they have come from the natural world. Trees the desk that I sit on, the phone that I use in some way has been imbued with life force just by and right of it coming from the natural world. And that is kind of a rough shot of what animism is. So in that way, I do like the way the house is almost kind of this living representation of the idea of dyadic animism and this kind of belief in everything being alive, and the kind of living wood that we see happens with this man's mom. She literally turns into sort of like a tree. So for me, that is the crux of the episode in terms of theology.
The
It was
comedy
fun.
granddad,
Yeah,
oh, just hanging around,
comedy,
hiding in the
the
dumbwaiter or hiding in
creepy,
the.
vaguely pedophilic dude standing there just staring at college students
Yeah.
is strange, but
How are you
I
settling
like the
in?
little bit more thriller type episodes. I
Yeah.
do like this one a little bit. Again, I love the backdrop. I think the home itself is beautiful. I don't know that you could pay me enough money to stay there overnight. I think Bill's college roommates are all daft and, completely without merit and have no real reason to be I mean, the whole episode could have happened with just Bill, and we still would have had a really completely decent episode, but maybe I'm just being a little harsh. Your thoughts, Professor?
No, the only other thing is the archaeological angle is it's a house, fixed in time, 1930s. It's Gothic. Well, it's not Gothic, but it's that idea of sort of haunted house, but it's static and there's old, and then the electrical circuits don't update. But I mean, you have to suspend so much disbelief that they buy this and they just go, oh, it's cheap, so we'll move in. But it's a fun plot. And the first, again, it's the fourth episode in a row where it's down to earth, even if it's not on earth. It's simple, self-contained. It does a job. It's fun. It's watchable. It's good. And there's some interesting themes. So yeah, it's fine. I have nothing else to say about that apart from Suchet is freaky as fuck. I'm not say that, am I? But anyway, yeah. Poirot goes weird.
I thought that's who that was.
Yeah.
Oh. And I've seen him in a couple other things that he's always been very interesting in, and then he's just like this creepy, wide-eyed, vaguely, he's the kind of guy you think has to tell his neighbors that he's moved into their community when he's moved into their community.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
neighbours are putting up. If it was in Britain, you'd have neighbours putting up posters about him being a pedo. I'm probably going to get banned off this live if I say these things. I've got to be careful with what I say. Sorry.
No, you're okay. So Oxygen is our next episode, and I'm going to let you go first. Because I have some interesting things to say about it that are going to make you go, how did you come to that conclusion? But that's what I'm here for.
So this is about, they come to a space station off Earth, a satellite of Earth, and they find a crew that are being slowly dying because their spacesuits are turning against them. And they're trying to fight to survive. Bill actually dies, or does she? And it's really sinister because the spacesuits move when the person's a dead corpse. It's like a zombies in space, but it's again technology gone wrong, or is it? And the twist is that it's the company. They're inefficient in their jobs, so the company turned off their oxygen, which is the commodity of the world, and it's capitalism in space. And that's what the Doctor says. It's capitalism in space. We're all dying, really. Relax or die when breathing. It's about all there is left is a good death. Is one of the it's this idea of it's how you die and how you face your death when something is killing you and there's no rescue. And they realise at the end that the company is not coming to rescue them. The company is coming to replace them with new staff now that once their bodies have been removed. So it's a deeply horrific critique of late modern capitalism, and imagines what would happen in the future if the way we treat our employees continues.
I absolutely agree with you. My take had everything to do with, are we wasting our oxygen when we could be engaging in things that have more meaning than just everyday worker bee pursuits? So for me, this was all about not the number of breaths that you take in a lifetime, but what you do with the number of breaths that you are given in a lifetime.
I think you
And
stressed me out, Rabbi. Don't start with this. I feel like every day is wasted as it is without you saying, did you really use your day to the full? Or did you just
listen,
fritter it away with that cake and those doses that you had or something? I don't know.
oh, wait,
I
listen
feel
to me
guilty now.
really quickly. As a side, does that cake and those doses bring you joy and meaning to your life and make you feel
It
less
was a.
alone
It wasn't
and give
actually
you a
cake.
balm for the
It was
soul?
a. It was a. What we
It's
could
a fuck
call
off
in.
cake.
It was.
But
Well, no, it was a bastardized sort of concoction because it was a Bakewell flapjack. So if anyone knows what a Bakewell tart is, that is a cake. Bakewell tart is from Derbyshire, a traditional sort of round, but it's a Bakewell a flapjack, which is an American thing, you know, basically sugar packed oats and shit, isn't it? And then, but they put the Bakewell style topping on it, and it's wonderful. And I will defend my consumption of them to the death, and it probably will be my death.
what?
But they're wonderful. Bakewell flap. So it was a kind of flapjack. So it was an intercontinental, transatlantic sort of snack. And this is totally irrelevant, so I don't know what I'm saying there. But yes, it did bring me joy, great joy, as did the
Okay,
dough.
so then that's my point. Oftentimes we are so consumed with the work that needs to be done, we forget to stop, let ourselves breathe, and let ourselves enjoy the life that we're living, whether it's eating a big fuck off cake, watching Doctor Who, just taking a doze during the middle of the day. And I think that's also what this kind of talks about. These people are being literally worked until they have no breath left. They're being worked to death using the commodity of their life. I often say, and I'm going to trust me on this, as someone who is an ex-sex worker, oftentimes people say, why did you sell your body for money? And the truth is, every one of us do. Every one of us chooses how we are selling ourselves with whom we give our time to. Whether I was giving my time to somebody for money in exchange for services rendered in a sexual way, or if I was standing at a department store counter giving them 8 hours of my day in exchange for money. Every one of us is selling our bodies. And we sometimes forget that in doing so, we do not de facto stop to smell the flowers. We're all about the grind. We got to hustle. We got to know what our goals are by the time we're 18, what college we're going to go to, what our major is going to be, and have our life entirely planned out for us. And I think not only does this talk about late stage capitalism, but I think it also talks about the idea that we need to all remember we only get unlimited numbers of breaths. And at the end of your life, what is going to be more important? That you were Neil deGrasse Tyson, or that the people who were around you felt safe, loved, honored, and your presence in their life made a difference?
Well, all I will say is that some jobs clearly have more grind than others, Rabbi. But I will. But moving beyond. But thank you for bringing up Neil again. And blessed of memory, because he's.
I make a beautiful, poignant
a very
argument.
Good point. And then I just make a cheap joke. Yes, that was a very good point, and it deserved respect rather than being degraded by my sort of Austin Powers style behave type response. But no, but seriously, I do take on board.
You'll edit this out later, I know, but it was never the brine for me. It was the swivel and the scoop.
Oh, maybe I will edit it out. Anyway, rapidly, but yes, I think you're right. But I suppose, can I just add something else that I hadn't really thought of? It's the sinister, the sinister thing isn't the spacesuit taking over and killing the people. It's the realization they're not being rescued, but the team coming on the next spaceship are their replacements. But it's the trickery, which I'm sorry to bring it up, but it reminds me of these horrific scenarios in certain mass killing episodes where no one knows exactly what's going to happen, and they're given music, they're given a sense of, we're just going in here, and they don't know what's happened. Some may guess, but and it's that horrible that basically they're being replaced. How many other teams have been killed off? It's left hanging. This horror is there could be anyone who becomes unproductive. It's really terrifying. Links to other scenarios that I think is really, well, that's what struck me anyway.
I know, I agree with you. But
and I don't feel it was very satisfactory. They ended it with them going, well, we're going to have words with the head office, and the two survivors go, we're going to have words with the head office. And then the doctor goes, oh, don't worry, there's a revolution and it's all right. And I thought, well, come on, you could have stayed around and sort of knocked some heads together with your Venusian taekwondo or whatever. I mean, I was a bit annoyed by that, but I thought he's a bit so much for social justice. The doctor should be in there, literally putting some corporate heads on spikes.
I absolutely agree with you. Are you ready for Extremis?
So this is the first of 3 episodes which bring us to the classic archaeological horror tropes. I'll just say this up front. We have monks again, sinister
and
monks who are literally living mummified. They're mummies. They're monkish mummies with a freaking space pyramid trying to control time and memory. So it's like a great play on the idea of time and memory, and I'll leave it at that, and that consent is required to allow them to take over the world. And it's a good example. The Doctor fails. Like when, like in previous big play episodes, big multiple episodes, where the Doctor fails to stop the Daleks taking over Earth, where the Doctor fails to stop the Cybermen. It's another episode where the Doctor has to claw back from the very, very brink. And so that's, I think it's all the classic stuff. And yes, of course, along the route, we get other great illusions. We get the Vatican, the whole, everything to do with I still haven't quite worked out that he's been, how it all works. But anyway, I love the idea of, the Doctor gets it off with Pope Benedict IX because of her magic of her castanets. And the female pope, which is transplanted from Pope Joan to Pope Benedict IX. There's a nice 11th century sort of fictional female pope brought in there, which I thought was interesting. And I liked that there is also you get the backstory of who the Doctor's imprisoning on Earth, who is Missy, the incarnation of the Master. And the Doctor, and there's a society somewhere that is expert in killing people, even Time Lords, so they can't come back. And they have the Doctor in a fatality index of the whole universe, of the number of, and he appears impressive number of fatalities accredited to him. So I think there's so many levels. So the bad guys and their monkish, corpsey, mummified pyramid vibe, they're controlling memory and time, and to manipulate and take over the Earth for reasons that aren't really clear, but it's always the Earth they want. And then you've got this whole medievalism of, back in the past, the Doctor got it off with Pope Benedict IX, and then you've got the whole other planet that executes people and keeps a fatality index, which I thought was a brilliant vibe and thing. So they're the 3 things that stood out across the 3 episodes for me. And of course, it goes without saying that when the monks take over, they're quasi-fascists. They have a kind of thought memory police who go around, and anyone who shows signs of remembering a time before the monks is treated like so it's like that kind of fascist state, model. Yeah, I thought those were the points I wanted to say over the 3 episodes. I like the memory police idea.
Okay. So for me, here is the breakdown. First of all, we have the Vatican, and anything that involves the Vatican, I am like, all right, let's watch. One of the things that struck me was the idea that these monks wear all this red clothing. And yes, while higher ups within the Vatican, like we have the cardinals wear the cardinal red, the style that the monks actually wear is more reminiscent of Buddhist monks wearing the red colors than it is of any other, which I find interesting given that they travel in a giant pyramid. So I'm kind of like, what were the writers thinking? In addition to, the style also is very reminiscent of the Magi that we see when we watch The Mummy, and how their dressing style is a little bit reminiscent of the Magi from The Mummy. So I also find that to be kind of an interesting, it's almost like they're trying to create this kind of almost de facto religion, a blend of Egyptian like Buddhist, and somehow that makes them end up at the Vatican because they believe that the Vatican has these secret underground catacombs. It's a well-known conspiracy theory of the Vatican having these secret underground tombs that have lost books, and they have stolen so much stuff. To some degree, they're not wrong. There are a lot that the Vatican possesses that no one will ever get to see, and it's probably not in my lifetime at the very least, that they have no rights to. And part of me, remember, I love you, much like the British Museum, the Vatican believes they are entitled to whatever artifacts. They are entitled to whatever artifacts that they want. I will say, I love Missy. I'm completely in love with this iteration of the Master. She has this genius, like, sense about her that makes your blood turn cold, because she's smiling at you in this kind of seductive, draw you in sort of way. She draws you in, makes you want to believe whatever she's going to say, and then just done. She has very much kind of a Harley Quinn-esque vibe about her in terms of villains. So, but I'm here for it. I love bad girl kind of villains that you never know if they're going to seduce you or shoot you. Like I'm here for that. So I love that.
As long as seduction's first, I don't mind.
You're like, listen, I'll take one and then the other. For me, watching the beginning of Extremis, when we see that we think it's going to be the doctor that is being called for this execution, and it's not. It's Missy, and her laying there in this like puddle of, just, you can see there's true fear on her face. Is this really going to be the end? Am I really done? There's actual true fear. And the actress who portrays her does it so beautifully. Like I said, I don't know. Like, there's something about this portrayal of Missy that really just absolutely does it for me. In saying that, those 3 episodes, the idea of playing with memory is disturbing for me. In terms of, especially for someone like myself who, as many of you know, I had a stroke many years ago, and I have gaps in memory, and I have short-term memory loss at times. And so the idea of playing with memory, especially when at a point when that's all we actually are left with is our memories. So the idea of playing with memory like that is something that is a disturbing archetype in any kind of media that I watch. But something that gets me is this idea that in order for the monks to take over the world, they need consent. But they need consent from someone who is so unbelievably pure-hearted. Now, why is that? I've thought about this a lot since we watched it. What were the writers trying to get at when they decided to take this idyllic, like, do you have a pure heart? Is your intention come from the best possible place, but then kind of turning that on its ear and using it as a way to control people? And then I think, but isn't that what we do? We often take those who are the most pure of heart because they are so trusting and they are so filled with hope. And with hope, you can control anything. You give people just enough hope and you can have them in the palm of your hand for years to come. And I wonder if that's what they were trying to go at, is someone who is so willing to sacrifice themselves for literally anyone.
But remember, though, it's Bill who combats the monks because it's her core memory of her mother that allows her to fight back, and she becomes a window on the world without the monks because she's able to remember this. And the idea, it's a naive idea, I think. I don't know enough about psychology. It's a naive idea that there's some memories are so core and pure that any because the monks are basically doing what politicians do. They just rewrite history. We're seeing this with the you see it daily with the lies of what is said, what isn't said. We're not allowed to talk about Brexit anymore because if you mention Brexit, you're some kind of breaking some kind of religious taboo by mentioning something that everyone agrees is a complete disaster, and yet somehow it saved us from being destroyed by alien forces, whatever they are. And yet constantly we're being faced you're not allowed to talk about it. In the same way as in America, maybe there are certain issues that you can say, the thoughts and prayers whenever there's a disaster of a particular kind. Well, why don't we do something
Sorrows.
about the core issue, the actual core issue? I know a lot of people say this, but my point is that there's a block. No. Oh, you would make it about that. You would make it about the fact that he had access to those, and it's kind of yes, yes. Well, what else could it be? But my point is, it's like that. It's the ideological block, and ideologies operate in that they don't make things, they don't hide things because by making them disappear. They hide them by making them unspeakable, by making them unthinkable. And I think the idea is that the core memory of Bill breaks through that. Monk's ideology is literally being transmitted out like Wi-Fi, so that the monks have a world wide web or are sort of controlling everyone's mind, and she breaks through that. So I think there's lots of mixed up ideas here, and I'm not sure it's really thought through, but it is playing with the idea of politics, thought control, surveillance, fascism, and ideological overwriting of people's lived experience. So you can literally, the monks had only been there 6 months or whatever it was, and no one can remember from before the monks. So it's horrific, but it's actually it's commentary on a lot of what goes on in our society. Is people, you have whole leaders who we can't even remember. There's so many. They've got so many incompetencies and screw ups. People can't even remember them because there's so many. It's not that we can't access them. We have a record. We have papers, but there are just so many. They just keep on a roll, and people go, oh well, he's not so bad. Well, what about the things that happened last month? Oh yeah, that was last month. It's like, do you know what I'm saying? It's kind of, it has a sort of many commentary on our society.
Could we say then, is it possible to say that Bill's hope is both a blessing and a curse? Because it cursed her in the first place. Her hope and her belief and her purity of heart cursed her to bring the monks to the control. But it is her hope and her belief and her love and her strong memories of her mother that then breaks through to break said curse. Could the writers actually be trying to say that hope can be a dangerous thing in the wrong hands, and yet also be the thing that keeps us moving forward and keeps us upright, keeps us going, keeps us looking to the next day and not just saying we're done, we're going to crawl into a corner and say goodnight, we're going to, pop off. So I wonder if, I'm probably thinking way more into this just because I'm a theologian and that's how I think, and human condition is really like hard woven into my own biology. So I'm probably really overthinking this, and it's probably they just thought it would be kind of an interesting mechanic for the 3 episodes, but you never know.
But the monks,
Maybe
it's the classic use of religious organizations as horror imagery. Whether it's Buddhist, Christian, monks are bad, and they are controlling
never trust
faith
a monk.
And minds. What?
Never trust a monk.
Never trust a monk. It's a bad habit. And anyway, yeah. So I love that. I don't think it fully, each episode it goes all over the show. There's many things to criticize about those 3, but I think it has it's stacked with ancient worldy and medievalisms, because I forgot to say that the back plot, the backstory of Missy on the planet who are going to execute her is utterly a fantasy medievalist environment. With monkish robes, with a medieval style fantasy castle like set up in a lake. There's a whole thing we could talk about there of space medievalisms, and it's another one of those space medieval paths. So yes.
So I guess we are now on the Empress of Mars, yes?
We are.
After and this is Professor?
This is another classic archaeology episode. You've got firstly the steampunk episode element of the British Empire hitches a ride back to Mars on a spaceship. They call the Ice Warrior Friday after Robinson Crusoe, so they're treating him like a colonial savage, and primitive, and of course he's fooling them, he's playing them. But the British Empire goes to Mars basically in 1880, whatever it is. there's that aspect, which is great, ridiculous steampunk, outer space, Victoriana type thing.
I'm here for it. I love steampunk,
You know,
so I'm kind of here
it's like
for it.
rather than the Zulus, you got the Ice Warriors. Why us? Is just got to go to do my favourite quote from the film Zulu, which is, well, I've got two favourite quotes from. It's like, why, he's right, Sarge. Why us? It's because you're here, lad. Now get back on the ramparts with your mates. Which is my sort of mindless military sort of response. Like, it's totally scared. All these Zulus about to take. Why us? Why are we doing this? Because you're here, lad. You know, it was a mindless stuff because you're here. Anyway, I love that line. Of course, the other one I love from the film Zulu is where Michael Caine goes, "Chin Chin, we'll let you get back to your mud pies." You know, which is a line I use when I visit archaeological sites, which really pisses off the diggers. Anyway, no. Seriously, but you've got basically Victorian imperialism in outer space, right? So they have that element. Then you've got the fact that basically the Ice Warriors are space Vikings, right? They're a warrior culture. They're frozen in time for reasons we're not even sure why. But the Ice Queen, what she's called, Ice Queen comes. A tomb is found, which is very much like a medieval effigy tomb, where she is frozen as the effigy. That's another cool medievalism. You've also got the fact they overtly bring up the film Vikings with Tony Curtis and Kirk Douglas, and mention that the theme tune is amazing, which I think has to be a joke because it's one of those annoying, repetitive theme tunes of any of the great Hollywood classics. So maybe other people like that theme tune. For me, it's like water torture. Yeah, and if you don't know what the theme tune from the 1958 film The Vikings is, with Janet Leigh and Ennis Borgnine and Tony Curtis and Kirk Douglas, then I won't remind you of it because it's like mind torture. It's like having my head dug out with an audio spoon. But anyway, that point, but also, and I didn't notice this on the first time round, of course, there's two other Vikingisms in the thing that link the Vikings to Mars and the Ice Warriors. Firstly, because, of course, the actual real unmanned probes that NASA sent to Mars were called Viking, right? They extend that, and the probes that are being sent in the fictional world are called Valkyrie, which is then sort of kind of foreshadows the discovery of a warrior woman, you know, of an ice queen, right? So you've got a Valkyrie reference in there. And then secondly, I don't know if anyone noticed this, but this is a big one, and I'm claiming it if no one else has noticed it. The cart that the British soldiers are using in the mines beneath it is a reproduction. Now, we're never told where this wagon comes from. Is it a wagon that they brought from Earth? And you're supposed to superficially think it's a 19th century wagon, or is it a piece of paraphernalia they find on Mars? But either way, it's the wagon from the Osaboya ship, the famous 9th century ship burial from Vestfold in Norway, with the cats on the end carved in wood. Now, what the frick this is doing there, I don't know. I think it's just they had a prop extra maybe from an earlier episode they never used. But I really didn't notice that, and I don't know if anyone else has noticed it. If they haven't, I'm claiming it as my archaeological discovery of Doctor Who, that the cart on the wagon on Mars is a Viking wagon. And why they put it in there, as I said, whether they just had it as a leftover prop or not, I need to find out. So if anyone knows, any Doctor Whovian nerds, I need to know. But I claim that identification. And so I think what you basically got is medievalist Vikingisms in outer space and steampunk Victorian imperialists go head to head.
I remember you mentioning the cart while we were watching this, and I was just waiting for you to bring that up. I think it was probably prop master who didn't think much of it. And you're going to have to excuse me while I'm talking to you. As you saw, I had a chair accident. My
Is that what you were doing?
Yes, not on purpose.
I thought you were just disappearing because you were being attacked by something, or like sort of some wood lice came out. Dryad wood lice were attacking you.
Yes, the dryads decided they heard. Oh, see, there it goes again. Okay, hold on. Let me fix this. I apologize.
Yeah, you do that. So I'll just talk on if I may. So no, don't worry if you're disappearing, that auntie. It's okay. You know, we know people can't spend forever here, but this Empress of Mars episode, I think, has like outer space warriors. We've already met the ice warriors. They're basically wearing kind of Yermunbu helmets. Basically, they whether it was by design of the original ice warriors or not, they are basically outer space versions of warrior barbarian cultures with the warrior code. But here we see them almost entombed, coming back to life. And what's really funny is we never really work out why Araxa and her people are frozen, or why did they decide to be frozen? What happened on Mars that made them decide time was up? So we never really understand. The ice warriors sort of are like the Homo reptilia, which doesn't make any sense at all. We don't understand why they're sleeping through the millions of years. Why. It doesn't make any sense, but it doesn't matter. Does it have to, really? But the idea is they are entombed, but they're sleeping. And it's another idea of resurrection from tombs. So there's that theme as well. So it is a kind of resurrectional, Mummy Returns type thing. People love the idea of tombs being reanimated, that the dead coming back to life, but they're not dead. They're in suspended animation. And I just love the whole Viking vibe going on. I don't know if that's just because I see it, and I'm a professor who specialises in other Viking Age stuff, among other things, or it is generally there. I don't know. Are you all right now? Are you
Oh, so sorry. It's allergy season for me. So, for me, what I really like about this episode, and don't kick me for it, I'm a humanities nerd, is the devotion Friday has. So
and he actually saves the people and tries to create peace in the end, doesn't he?
Yes, he does. But at first he puts himself in this situation designed to make him a servant, all in pursuit of the devotion of his empress. The devotion of getting back to Mars and making sure that he can awaken his empress. I think that the writers overlook the power of that kind of devotion. And when we look about, we don't see it very often in everyday life. So I think that mechanic of this episode really spoke to me, the idea that someone is so devoted to their cause, to their person, to their nation, that they would put themselves in unsavory situations because they know at the end of that unsavory situation, their goal will be hopefully met. But the spin on that is putting himself into that situation, getting to know the people that he put himself in servitude to. He no longer has the goal that he set out. His goal changed. He evolves. Very few beings are static. Yes. We're always continuing to evolve. We're continuing to become different versions of ourselves. A good example is I'm at the age I am, and I've probably been 15 different people just because I have continued to evolve and I don't stay static and no one does. So the thought process that comes from this type of devotion and the irony that then at the end of the day, that devotion is not as powerful as the devotion he has created amongst the people whom he originally meant to kind of screw over, for lack of a better word, is interesting to me. I think there is an irony there that is overlooked. And again, maybe I'm reading too much into it. Maybe this season just got me in a different way than other previous seasons have, and I've just been like, ooh, like very all in. And I've always been all in on Dachu, but again, this is I never saw this. I never saw any of this, and so this first time watching it for me, I'm just kind of eating everything up and really trying to process what each of these episodes are, and that's it for me. That's
and of course,
again,
there's the good
humanities degree.
There's a good British imperialist versus bad British imperialist, and the soldiers are a mix of greedy and honest, and that usual mix, which is pretty played out in a standard way. But yeah, I thought it was good. So basically, it's Space Vikings versus steampunk Victorian British soldiers, which is good. And then we move on to another major archaeological episode, the Eaters of Light, which I can rant on about, or I can leave to you to introduce.
Please, no. Okay, so you have to. It has to be you. And the reason it has to be you is because lately, the esteemed professor has done so many videos on the Picts And that is
Picts.
really what this episode is surrounding, is the Picts.
So basically, the
after you,
storyline of this,
Professor.
the storyline of this episode mashes up the Rosemary Sutcliffe myth of the Lost Legion, of a Roman legion that gets lost, which is generally, I think, assumed to be just that we've lost them in the records and they probably moved to the Rhineland. But the myth is that there was a legion lost and slain and destroyed by the Caledonians. It then mashes that up with the Picts. The Picts don't appear in our historical records to the end of the 3rd century, so it's confusing over 200 years of British history. It's like equivalent to having, the Victorians turn up in the Second World War or something like that, or something like that. It's totally wrong, but it's fun. And the idea is it's the Picts are all Scots and they're even called Scotch as a joke by Matt Lucas's Nardole character, and it's funny. But the archaeological components, the story is built around the myth of the Lost Legion and the Roman legion that goes north. And we've seen other popular films play out that fictional idea. With the Picts, who are the Caledonians, who don't slay the Romans through the might of their armies. They are small, humble, young people, scared people, just like the Roman legionaries. But the guardian of this portal, makes the foolish decision to unleash a beast from another dimension to slay the Romans. So she screws up. So we have a Pictish warrior woman makes a decision that could destroy the entire universe. Is the scenario, which is of course silly but fun. Now the archaeological components is the Roman side, the Lost Legion, but the other side is the fact that the portal is a passage tomb of the late Neolithic or early Bronze Age. It's very much like a clava cairn that were found around Inverness. And so we have an early Bronze Age chambered tomb is the portal, right? And they're playing with the idea that light entering into these tombs do have a midwinter. Oh no, hang on. They have a midwinter. Is it a midwinter or midsummer sunrise alignment? Southeast. I think it's midwinter. I'm forgetting. Anyway, I have to check it out. But the idea is these passage graves do have solar alignments, so they're playing with that idea. That's inspired by prehistoric monuments, and they're mashing that up with the idea that the Picts obviously are famous for their symbol stones, and the most famous of the Pictish symbols is the Pictish beast, which is variously interpreted as a sea beast, a sea creature. Can you see that there? Yeah, the one in the middle, not the two at the top. Or some kind of mythical elephant or something. But that is the inspiration for the idea of these beasts from another dimension that are eaters of light, that consume light. And so what I love about this episode is it's taking a very fantastical inspiration from the archaeological record of the Scottish prehistoric period, the Pictish period, and the Romans. And it's putting them all together. And I suppose that's the fun bit. And also with it, you've got talking crows. They go caw because they are remembering crows. They're memorializing the sacrifice of the warrior woman who leads her people to defend our universe against these beasts through the portal tomb. And if they can still say the word caw, it's because it's rather ridiculous, but I like it. It's charming. Again, crows are remembering the sacrifice. So there's all sorts of nonsense. So as I say it sounds absolutely silly, but I like the idea. He calls it Pictish civilization, cairns, and doors to the underworld, and close to the sky, Iron Age churches, which is what the Doctor says, which is not wrong. And the Pictish beast is the inspiration for the supernatural form. And then, of course, the TARDIS itself gets commemorated by being carved onto a Pictish symbol stone. So the TARDIS itself is remembered. So it's another example of the archaeology of the TARDIS. We've seen the TARDIS in stained glass windows, in Van Gogh's paintings, and the TARDIS also appears in represented
outside of as house gods.
Sorry?
Pompeii. The fires of Pompeii, we see the TARDIS as a house god. Yeah,
that's it. Exactly. So the idea is that the TARDIS is percolated through history, which also plays with pseudo-archaeological nonsense, like people who come online saying, have you seen this evidence? There's a mobile phone on an Egyptian tomb. No, it's not a mobile phone. Or this is a spacecraft on a Mayan pyramid. It's like, no, it's not. Just you're so stupid you can't realise what. But it plays off that idea that it's joking, it's mocking that idea of that. Yeah, I love it. So I love this episode. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to say it. I love how gay the Romans are.
They're very gay, extremely gay.
They're
Pride Month.
so gay. They're so gay. I love that the literal, they call the leader of the Roman legion there old man, even though he's only 18, 17 years old, because he's the oldest of them.
I think that's silly. They would have been a lot older than that. The Roman legion service was 20 years.
But it's cute. So I love this. I love that they're having this intellectual discussion on their sexuality as if it is nothing. He's hitting on Bill, and Bill's like, I like ladies only. And he's like, oh, you're like this guy who only likes men. What, you don't like a little bit of flavor, a little variety? I love this. And the reason I love it is because anyone who has looked into the history of Romans, when they went went to war, they left their homes, they were often in flagrante with other members of their troops. Unfortunately, they did bring young boys with them to slack their need while they were away from home, while the women of Rome often dallied with each other while they're...
You turned Victorian, Rabbi. We're back to dallying, and what's this language coming from? No, I'm joking. Right. I'm just teasing you.
The women of Rome often drove each other.
Okay. Did they now?
Yeah, held each other up and drove them, in all sorts of manners.
And it was their kind of decadence, which is why the volcano blew up and their whole civilization got took over by the gods.
These were a group of women who got together, looked at men and said, nah, you know what? I'm going to make my own dick. I'm going to tie it around my waist. Yeah. So anyway. But this is a historically poignant part that they bring into, and another way that I feel that they use Bill, but not in a performative way, because they talk about it again like it's not a big deal. They don't bring light to it in a way that would say, oh look, gay. They're just like, oh, so you just like girls, all right. I like a little bit of both, so I love that part.
Yeah, it's good. I've said everything. Go on.
Yeah, it's my turn now, Professor.
I know.
I found the kind of a little bit of religious tropes. The idea of, I loved the crows. I thought the crows were a beautiful touch, not just because I like the idea of the world and its natural world having a bit of memory of us. So the idea that the crows are carrying on the memory. And again, this comes back to my Jewish idea of may their memory be for a blessing. So they go off to do this great thing to protect the world. And then we, thousands and thousands of years later, even though we don't know, it's still kind of woven now into the world that their memory has been a blessing. That in memory, because what you remember lives, the crows remember this person who went to save the world, and so in that way her essence and her being and all of them kind of live on. So I love that kind of trope. I love anything that plays with the idea that what is remembered lives, and that's just the terrible, just the fact that I'm a Jew does that for me. But that's really it. I love that, again, this season has shown that we are not hyping up the idea of LGBTQIA community as something that is outlandish and we have to make fun of it, but we are treating it endearly and as if it is just a part of person and something that could be just as easily discussed as, hey, are you married? You have a husband? Oh no, I happen to have a wife. Oh, good for you. No, wife? What? There's no pearl clutching at the idea that Bill has an interest in women. There's no pearl clutching at the Romans. They're just like, oh, yeah, okay, cool. And I love that part of it, the normalization that people are just different, and in being different, they're still wonderful. That's it. I'm done.
So yeah, I mean so can I just respond to this question? Crows have a global roles in folklore to do with memory, but I can't pin it on the Pictish or anything like that. We don't have enough evidence for that. But I'm stumbling over how to answer that one. But I think it's important to say that they've been quite liberal in mashing up different different ideas.
I mean,
it's fun. It's fun.
There are plenty of worldwide cultures and faith practices where the crow or the raven is a part of the belief system. Yes, we have Odin's raven, Hunan, and Munin. If you go into Egyptian mythology, we do have a few gods who have the head of a bird. You know, birds have been prevalent in the idea of many faith cultures and faith practices.
Yeah, they don't go so far as to make it a cheesy spin-off of Vikings, because that would have just been weird. There's a lot of it's not trying to be historically accurate in any way. It's mashing up lots of ideas. Yeah, but no, it's good. And that takes us to the world enough and time, which is an interesting. I mean, it's apparently, according to my brother, who's a sci-fi boffin, it's a well reused plot. But it's a great idea. They tried to test Missy by sending her in to help a spaceship, and it all goes wrong. And it comes wrong because the spaceship is trying to reverse out of a black hole, and time is operating differently between the ends of this vast colony ship. And they find out it comes from Mondas, and someone at the other end of the ship was trapped there too, and is basically finding a way out by creating another version of the Mondasian Cybermen in the ship over a long time, and by kidnapping the bodies. And it's horribly cruel and grim and fascist, Nazi experiment illusions. And poor Bill is turned into one of these Cybermen, but they have to fight their way through time up the ship. And it's a great plot. I wish they'd So it frustrates me because I think they could have done more with it. But I think it's classic horror sort of Cybermen as created out of pain, which we've seen before, but never quite so grim as this. And we also see why the early cheesy, and it gives a justification for why the early cheesy Cybermen of William Hartnell look so crap, because they are, you see they are early experiments in this road. So I like that. I thought it was good. And of course, it's the master against the master, because you realise that the person who's trapped at the other end of the spaceship who's making the Cybermen is the old master, and Missy has to encounter him. And there's a face-off between the two characters, between past master and modern day Missy.
I love it. I have to say that until encountering Missy, that iteration of the master was my favorite. His just maniacal, adherence to creating chaos in every aspect of everyone's life was just something that was over the top and gorgeous to behold. So watching the two, and this is the evolution of Missy for me. The evolution of her realizing that that no one is black and white, that no one exists, and the idea of someone is all bad or someone is all good. And I love that she comes to this conclusion during this time when she realizes, he's right. It's time to stand with him. And her just so eloquently slipping that freaking knife, and saying, oh no, I gave you enough time so you can, get back to your own TARDIS and have a cup of tea. Just that it's herself, moment, isn't it? You're just oh.
She can't kill herself.
And it's self-sacrifice. It's this idea of self-sacrifice in hopes of.
Will that be it? Will that be the end of the master? Is Missy? Is that the master kills himself? And of course, we have the the other thing that's archaeological, I suppose, is not only the play on the whole ship becomes from a retro sort of time thing. So basically, you're going back to this horrible industrial age of experimentation in the end of the back of the ship. And as they invade forward, you come across these idyllic, almost like homesteads from the 19th century, almost like a glorified frontier. Not necessarily American, but a kind of a rurality of. And so you have that idea that as they're going up the ship, the people that have inhabited there for different durations of time are living very different kinds of technological and social life. And so you have, it's almost like the past is being invaded by the future, with them as they climb up, as the Cybermen that have evolved, been created, climb up the ship. It's very sinister. I love that idea.
And we see that. We see these older Mendesian Cybermen now walking alongside because of the time stretch due to being so close to a black hole. The time stretch is causing, time to move differently on different parts of the ship. So we end up seeing a scene where you have more modern versions of the Cybermen walking right next to these kind of older William Hartnell versions of the Cybermen. And I'm here for that. I really enjoyed this. I think that Nardal staying there. I will be honest, Matt Lucas trying to play straight is strange to me because that man is a big Nelly bottom. You can just see it on his face.
Well, he doesn't. He's not even a good actor, frankly. It's not even. I mean, it struggles by because he's so awkward in the role, and I didn't understand that end point. Why they did that at the end? That was a real.
Probably. The only thing I can think of is they just were done with his arc. Now, here it comes. This is where I find out that yes, Doctor Who employed kill your gays. Doctor Who takes the first openly gay companion and kills her, de facto kills her. Now we're left with this idea: did she actually get killed? Because we know she's. Oh, I think that's optimism on your part.
She dies as a corporeal form, but the pilot saves her.
Right.
And her memories, and the Doctor gets his memories restored. Right? Am I getting confused here?
No, you're that comes in the world, or the Doctor Falls. No, that actually comes in. No, I'm sorry. Twice Upon a Time is when we see he gets his memories back, and he gets to remember Clara.
Sorry, I was getting confused. In the Doctor Falls, yeah, I have got myself confused. Sorry. But I did generally think that the Doctor, she goes off into the universe with the pilot, that this girl who's augmented with this hyper pan whatever being and has been able to transfer around the universe, she is no longer really human anymore. But Bill Potts is no longer a human either. But they do escape. They do have, in the same way that Clara is dead, very parallel to Clara. Clara has no heartbeat, but is still alive because she's living between the beats. And that's the Raven again.
So veiled. It's so thin for me.
Whether you like it or not, I'm just saying they're kind of giving an exit route. I'm just saying they're giving a kind of, so she's not dead, but is dead. So they're living in. But this, one thing I haven't mentioned is this whole 2 series is very much more obsessed with the soul. Last season, the Capaldi era is much more interested in the idea of the soul, that you may not survive in a corporeal form, but you are living. And we've seen this with River Song and being uploaded to hive minds, and we've seen that all sorts of played out in different ways. But I think they're very much more playing with the idea of the soul and some kind of spiritual survival. So I think Bill Potts is alive in death, is as best I can get at it.
Oh, I actually like that. I might quote that later, alive in death. I think I'm just going to steal that. I might use that at some point. I'm going to make a note. I don't know. I think that she got 1 season. I think that they did a pretty good job portraying her, but I do feel like she easily could have come over and like they did with Rose and go on to another Doctor and have been an integral part of Jodie Whittaker's Doctor. Now, as for the Twice Upon a Time, which is the Doctor coming out onto the South or the North Pole or South Pole and seeing, of course, William Hartnell's version of the Doctor, which is not, of course, portrayed by William Hartnell, but is portrayed by the same actor who played Filch in all of the Harry Potter movies, for those who would like to know. And he does, in my opinion, an excellent job of recreating William Hartnell's essence of the first Doctor. Oh Lord, oh Lord, oh Lord. I absolutely loved this freaking episode. I loved it so much. And remember, I kept telling you I'm crying again, and I'm a crier. Like, let's be real. I'm easily moved by things. It's truth. I just cry at everything. I used to cry at Charmin commercials, which for those in the UK, it's a toilet paper we have over here. And we used to have this commercial in regards to kids kind of messing around with the guy who was stacking the thing. And I would be like, leave Mr. Whipple alone. And I would just start crying. So all I'm saying is, for me, this episode was beautiful. I do love that in this episode, the Doctor does get his memory back. He's fighting against the idea of regeneration. He's saying, I'm done. I'm not going to do it. I'm done. Don't I get to choose? Don't I get to rest? Don't I get to have a say in what becomes of me? And we find this moment in time is frozen, because William Hartnell has decided the same thing. So now you have the last Doctor and the first Doctor come face to face. And the first Doctor has to deal with the fact that he does get to go on in many generations. And the last Doctor has to deal with the fact that the first Doctor is so out of place. Like, he believes that, that the Bill that they see is there to be a servant. He says really unsavory things to her, a product of his time. Most definitely, you need to be cleaning in here. This could use a tidy up. I mean, it's campy, but at the end of the day, I love that he gets to see Clara.
That was emotional. I really hated this episode when I first saw it. It wasn't a thing. I don't think I even paid attention to it. I thought it was shite. I love the idea of Rusty is back, killing off all the other Daleks and zapping them, and all the Daleks are out of their shells going. I love that. I love the idea of the weapon forges of Villengard, which possesses a classical temple ruin city appearance. So there's an archaeological dimension to the setting. I like the idea, of course, that there is an uploading at moment of death of people's memories, and it's another memory extraction technique combined with time travel. So it's a kind of way of another playing game with immortality. Are people, so there's an interesting dimension there. So yes, and it's all about my memories would shatter you, that the Doctor's memories, just like with the planet in the episode where he says, take me, and the planet can't cope with the amount of information the Doctor has of the universe. It's this idea that the Doctor's memories are so exhaustive. And so there's lots of good stuff there.
What about Lethbridge Stewart? I love that.
Yes, and of course you've got Hamish Lethbridge Stewart. Yeah, so you have they let him off. Now, how he gets to let him off, I don't know. And it does, again, it's another one of those playing God moments, isn't it? He goes, oh, I thought you're not supposed to do this. Oh, he's done it anyway, But it's kind of, again, they can't quite resolve what they're talking about, can they? But anyway, I don't want to be too much of a pedant, but I thought it was a nice closure for Capaldi. I thought Capaldi didn't have the best storylines, but I think the third series gave us some of the best. Not the big, grand, storyline episodes, but the individual episodes, just like season 9 with the girl who died. The woman who lived was rubbish, but I thought the girl who died was fantastic. There's individual episodes. There's the Heaven Sent, Hell Bent. I think that for me, Capaldi is the best and underused and should be back. Screw David Tennant.
I thought so too.
He can go away.
It's like that.
He's too old. Is it? He's going to get thinner and thinner.
How is he too old when? Wait,
he looks more like one of the monks now. He looks so. Get rid of him. Get rid of him. Get Capaldi back. Capaldi is never old. Capaldi will live forever.
So
and Capaldi's Doctor Who is the only one that's used for. It's the first one to properly whip ass of somebody since Pertwee. properly,
that's true.
properly Venusian taekwondo or
Just
whatever it is. Or
Taekwondo,
somebody.
yeah, he kicked a lot of ass. I don't know. I liked it. I did like the use of a historical moment of the when everyone stopped and stopped fighting for the day because of Christmas. I did like that. Um, I did like the use of memory in this one once again, and yes, I think they're telling the story of what is remembered lives on, and the idea of extract. Aren't we all nothing but just our collective memories? So I do like that. Um, and then we see what probably for me is one of the better regeneration scenes that the Doctor has had. I loved Eccleston's turning into Tennant, and I loved Tennant turning into Matt Smith. That being said, Capaldi into Whittaker and his monologue, "Be kind," remember to laugh, all of that. I'm fine. I'm trying not to cry again. Just the reminiscent of his speech there at the end before he turns into Whittaker is outstanding. It's one of the best moments in the history of the television series for me personally. And I have a thing for the fact that Jodie Whittaker is wearing, of course, Peter Capaldi's clothes. Not that we're going to get too much into it, but going into the next series, the first episode is her wearing Peter Capaldi's outfit, and I am unbelievably here for it because I will just say, and this stays, of course, between us, you and I, Professor, there is very little else.
People are listening.
There is very little else more sexy in the world than having a woman show up in a man's button-down T-shirt with her arm, rolled up just slightly.
Really?
So, molto bene.
Sadly, she changed it into sort of more clownish costume, which is a sad shame, I think. And
it is.
Let's not go there.
So as we have finished this part, I would like to open it up if you're okay. If anyone has a few questions,
I'm more than happy to take questions if there's any comments. Lots of real good comments as we've been going on. I don't really have answers to a lot of them, but a lot of really good insights.
I am looking forward to. I'm not. Obviously we won't comment on Jodie Whittaker until we've gotten through the series, but we can make a few predictions. And for me, I like the idea of David Tennant coming back, but I don't know why. It's a strange thing to recycle faces for me. So the idea that he comes back, and now of course he's going to be older, and you hate his guts. And, think he's a twat or whatever, and we needed to have Capaldi come back is interesting to me.
The question
Danny
here
Pink
is
actually did blow up. Somebody asked about Danny Pink, and yes, Danny Pink did sacrifice himself and blow up as a Cyberman. So it would be interesting to see that. If you could see a companion come back, who would that be?
Of the Revive series, I had more than enough of Rose, so she can sod off.
All of them. Any of them.
Well, I can't remember all the other ones, to be honest. Adric's my favourite, I suppose. Get Adric back. He died because of the Cyberman as well. Fuckers.
Yeah.
But get Adric back.
It's always a Cyberman. Yeah, I'm completely over Rose. I really hope to never see Rose again. Yes, we know we're going to see Martha. Not Martha, Donna. We know we're going to see Donna.
Donna's annoying. She can sort of. No,
you didn't like Donna? That's
no,
Donna, because you have no taste.
As long as they don't bring back James bloody Corden, as long as we don't have James Corden back, I'm happy.
I think you feel about James Corden the way I feel about Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Neil deGrasse Corden. James deGrasse Tyson. Some kind of, I can imagine some carpool karaoke with those two, and they both just end up hitting a train on a crossing and something. It's all tragic, and
Professor.
Anyway, sorry. What someone asked earlier, is the Master really the Doctor? And they're all, well, you could go that route. I mean, I think that'd be a bit naff if it was. I think they should really, if they're going to do something with the Master, they really need to give some nice backstory to the Master. What all they do with bad is tell how did they become so bad, and there's a lot more they could do with that. and they could have a
I
good.
would love to see that unfold. I would love to see, because I am a sucker, in case you hadn't noticed, which I'm sure you have. I'm a sucker for a redemption arc. So I would love to delve into the history of, and the creating and the weaving of the history of the Master. That would be something that
I would
would be
also like to see. I would
outstanding.
also like to see Doctor Who literally shut down all of the old enemies. They've got a Black Doctor now. I hope that they don't use that as a
Oh,
to try and.
Chudigatwa. Oh,
I hope they don't, because they're trying to placate those that are whining about a woman and then whining about a person of colour. I hope they don't regress to, we've got to pack in all the old classics and have more Daleks, more Cybermen. I just want them to shut them down, say we've done enough, we need some new monsters, we need some new mechanoids. Just stop. No more Cybermen, no more Daleks, no more Zygons. I think the Zygons were comedic. We need to shut up, go away. We're going to take it off Earth, have no more Earth episodes. We have Into the Universe, but new monsters. And I think that would be a
yeah,
breath of fresh air. But
I
it
think
won't
so
go
too.
that way. They'll end up
And
recycling it.
I'm gonna answer ML Stone. Although I would love to see Mickey come back as a returning badass. The problem is that the actor who portrays Mickey is not welcome back because of his behavior on and off set with the other actors and the women in his life. So
Yeah, he went through a bit
is
of
not welcome back. I like the Rhino
And
Police. I
Captain
do
Jack
too.
Harkness, is he also persona non grata?
Oh, so I think that Captain Jack Harkness is on his apology tour, but I don't like that he leaned into, if I can be quite frank, that he leaned into the idea of his queerness as an excuse to
No.
evade responsibility for his behavior. Like the idea that, oh, well, queer men just go around, taking their todgers out and whacking them around at people is ridiculous. And it's not a thing that happens often. And if it is something that happens often, then it shouldn't.
Well,
I don't want to see random men's penises. I just don't. Unless I've asked you and said, hey, I want to see your dick. Here is my consent. I really don't want to see it. Also, don't send people random dick photos unless they've, unsolicited dick photos are terrible.
On a lower scale. We see it with TikTok creators, not necessarily in that, but we see people who think they've got a shield because they are of a particular gender, race, thinking they can get away with things that are just totally deplorable. I sent a video today by a creator that is so obnoxious about the way he talked about a celebrity. It's just because they're celebrities doesn't mean you shouldn't be,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Seth says Scotland has abandoned Jack Harkness because he flashed his walloper in front of kids while in panto up here.
Oh, for God's sake! I mean, this is. I mean, but it's not. I don't think it's so much in it. I have no detailed knowledge of that, but I think it's nothing to do with sexual orientation. It's not because people who are that way feel. It's all to do with the power afforded to people,
to celebrity,
to people. The Phil Schofields. It's not because it's the abuse. Yeah, becomes
the
a power.
problem is the backlash to that on the queer community is, and I this is something I talked about in a recent video, is that we are then seen as hypersexual.
Yes.
We are seen as very hypersexual people, and then that lends us to be open to people being hypersexual with us, even if that's not what we don't want. So all he did was really harm our own community, which is sad because I love Jack Harkness' character. I thought his character was interesting. I thought it was funny.
But it's equally not fair. You could say, I mean, I agree with everything you say, but you could equally flip it around the other way. Is that the problem, as I've been talking to you about issues in the academic community, I'm angry at these things and everyone who is of that community is angry because that they're being held to a higher standard. And there's literally hundreds of people waiting around going, look, this is what they're all like. This is what it becomes, as you say, it does. It shouldn't be the way. It shouldn't be like that. But it should be just, he's a complete jerk who does these things, and the particular. Yeah, but it becomes that stereotype of hypersexualization and they're all
They're
anyway. I'm very
all like
angry
that.
about that,
They're
and
all like that. Every one of them is
yeah.
like that. Yeah. Did you like my really bad accent? It was terrible.
Well, I didn't even notice it, to be honest with you. Was that an accent?
You're on one
were you
today.
trying to sound like you're from Tennessee? Were you? Sorry.
You are in so much trouble. Let me just say, Professor. So are there any things you are looking forward to in the next upcoming season? I know you and I have almost finished the first series.
I predicted that my remembrance of the Jodie Whittaker episodes was that they were a dire disappointment, and I'm watching them again. I'm watching them with you, and it's so much more fun. But
That's
I love the
because I'm
actors.
great company.
You are. I love the actors. I think some of the storylines are less stupid than some of the ones we've had in Capaldi and some of the Matt Smith ones. But at the end of the day, they're subpar. They're collectively subpar. Let me withhold my judgment until there's still archaeological exciting things to address. There's still interesting dimensions to it, and we've got some doozies of bad archaeology being done. There's a great episode which I can't wait to see again with you, where they actually show an archaeological excavation, and it's just like, oh my god, even the Mummy Returns has a better archaeological excavation than this. Even The Witcher has a better archaeological excavation than this. But it's great, it's funny, and it's a good episode because it gets Vikings back into it. So you get another.
Your obsession with Vikings is starting to become a little concerning for me.
It's not my obsession.
I will say this, and I'm going to go into it more in depth, but to answer you about Rosa Parks, I was 90% with it. There were some issues that I had with it, and that is because I am an American and it is a part of my integral history to my country. But 90% of that episode I really enjoyed, although we'll go into it more.
You haven't told me what you didn't like. You were very positive about it. I thought you'd hate it because, it's such an integral part of US history. I thought it would come across as a bit cringe to try and play with that. It's such a recent thing. In the same way with the Punjab episode, it's a bit too on the nose, if that's the right phrase. It's a bit too... But you seem to really like it, so I'm interested in seeing how you.
I did. It's 90% of it, yeah. And I'll talk to you about it when we're done. If you have a few minutes, I'll chat with you about what.
Okay.
Like upon reflection, I was a little like. What am I looking forward to? The thing is that for the longest time, David Tennant was in fact my favorite Doctor. Before that, it was of course Tom Baker. I liked, do you want a jelly baby? And I just liked his kind of camp. You never forget your first. So William Hartnell, of course, is etched on my soul, etched even. But, I think that each one of the Doctors have brought an interesting take on humanity. Because at the end of the day, Two Hearts, all that, Alien, it's really a lot of critique about humanity and about what it means to be human in the universe. And that's something I've echoed a few times, is that to me, the entirety of Doctor Who is an exploration of, humanness. And what
humanity and mortality, in my opinion, and it's the fact is, I'm not a massive Whovian, despite the scarf. I'm happy to slate it. I don't care about. I'm going to wait until. I'm not going to I'm not obsessed with reading all the what's coming out, what's happening. I'll watch it when it's out. I didn't watch the last series of Jodie Whittaker because I was so fed up with it. So I'm years out of date. But I'm looking at that afresh. So you've got one more series, and then we'll both be into new territory for the final series. But my point is, we want to do this with our academic takes.
Virgins together.
Yeah, and we'll but we are bring our critical perspectives to it. We're not just going, oh, we're fans and we must love it and find something good even when it's shite. We're happy to say when we don't think it worked. There's always things you can pick at these episodes, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of interesting things that reflect on our society and our society's attitude towards humanity and religion, culture, death. Yeah, so it's all fun.
I think any really good show in general is going to parallel what people live through. I think what makes the hallmark of any good program, movie, anything is it involves you. You can see yourself in the places of these characters, and you can identify with them, and you can identify with their struggle, their triumphs, their hopes, their failures. And in some ways you actually can learn right along with them. My dad used to say that a smart person learns from their mistakes, but a wise person learns from someone else's. And I think that in some ways that media does that for us. We see the mistakes of these beloved characters, and we kind of learn from behaviors that they display how not to, and how to treat the people and the environment around us.
Well, this Ghost Shah seems to be a real Whovian, and they say Whittaker was brilliant, but the writing is about amazing people and situations that are poorly written. So yeah. I don't disagree with that, but we can come back to that about how I think the acting, the characters are fun. I just think some of the plots are a bit like, really,
And I agree with Regan. I will say that I agree with Regan. Character growth happens through tribulations. I always say no one grows in comfort. There's no person who has ever evolved while being comfortable. You have to put yourself out there in uncomfortable places, because the universe, hold on. Hi, I'm Rabbi Hannah. The universe acts as spiritual, soulful evolution sandpaper. Its entire job is to get rid of the rough edges, make us more smooth, allow us to grow past what we originally were, and mold ourselves, change ourselves, regenerate ourselves even into the best versions of ourselves that we can be. There's a point between who we are now and who we are meant to be, and as long as we are constantly striving for it, we're going to get there. Sorry. Let me go ahead and take off the rabbi hat again. Okay, I'm done. You know, this is what happens when I've had 3 cups of coffee, is suddenly I'm awake and I'm a rabbi. But if there's no other questions, we've hit about the 2-hour marker. That tends to be about our cutting off part. Oh, please don't make me cry on live. Thank you though, Porg. I appreciate it. As always, it's been a pleasure. Is there anything that you need to tell us about what's going on in your life? I do know that you are working on a couple of books that are due to come out. I'm very excited to hear about. Yes.
I'm going to do another. Still doing my 8 p.m. Wednesday BST Wednesday lives. And yeah, I've got my books working on. Finally, I've had the last submissions in for that, and I'm writing on the introduction for the Office Light Journal 5. The cremation book, I'm still waiting for the final submissions to come in. I've got to write the intro for that. It's all going to be done by the end of July, and then the end of June, and then I can sleep through the summer. But I've got so many other ideas of projects to get on with. It never ends, but I want to get these 2 out of the way. And I've just been editing a very late submission that came in, well, on time, but at the very last moment today. And a colleague who writes in a very different style to mine, shall we say. And so it's been rather tough trying to navigate their interpretation of the English language. But anyway, that's all fun. And it's all part of the joys of academia. But apart from that, I've just been chilling out in the office. There's been no one else around, because it's been really good, just living my isolated life. You know,
anyone who is in this life who is not, I love it. Anyone who is in this life who is not already following the professor absolutely needs to. He brings a reverence and fun and wit, an undeniable wit, to everything he teaches, and occasionally sings for us. He definitely does a little bit of singing here.
That might never happen again, but people are very forgiving.
I am completely, undeniably grateful that you're a force of good in the world. The other thing I will say is this month, June, not only is Pride Month, but it is the Professor and I's friendiversary. Literally 1 year ago this month we had our first proper chat that lasted for hours, and we have not been separated a day since. So if you believe in platonic soulmates, I think that he's definitely mine. I can't speak for him, but you know. So at some point this month, we will be doing that kind of a commemoration of our deep and uninviting friendship. And so I look forward to that as well. In addition to the Doctor Who lives, we are also planning to do something with Nerdshed and Archaeowolf on Uncharted and possibly Tomb Raider. So please look for that. And the only thing I'm going to plug is because two things happening. If you go into my bio, you're going to see a link for the Rainbow Railroad. That is an important organization here in the United States that helps trans individuals at risk in red states relocate to places where they can receive affirming care and help with housing, insurance, etc. So that is something that is very dear and important to me, especially living in the United States. Other than that, do you have anything else to add?
No, I'm just looking forward to more Jodie Whittaker Doctor Who season. What is it? 11. 11. 11.
11. Yeah, 11.
Yeah.
And that should be in a couple weeks, honestly. And thank you again for everyone who stuck it out, spent all this time with us. And we'll see you again next time.
For relaxing times, make it Archaeodeath time.